A very good morning. It's just past 10 by the clock. We are back again with another edition of News on the Hour. This is your one-stop show for all that matters from the field of politics, business, sports, entertainment. A big focus on COVID-19 fight in India and also the vaccination drive that set a new record. Lots to look forward to. We cut all the noise, bring you news as it happens on the ground. Let's get started this Wednesday morning with the top stories at the top of this hour. Prime Minister Narendra Modi addresses the nation on the prevailing COVID-19 situation in the country, assures citizens that measures are being taken to ensure availability of oxygen and hospital beds, says that lockdown in any part should be used as the last resort, calls upon state governments to ensure daily wage labourers are least affected due to restrictions. Government sets up a fight to beat pandemic. Insurance scheme under Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan package for healthcare workers fighting COVID-19 extended for a period of 1 year. Imports of remdesivir, API, injections and specific inputs made import duty-free. Puducherry announces lockdown. Karnataka imposes night curfew as COVID situation in the country shows no signs of improvement. Vaccination continues in the country at full speed. India becomes the fastest country to administer 13 crore doses in just 95 days. UP decides to provide free vaccine to all above 18 years. Ram Navami celebrated across the country today. President, Vice President, Prime Ministers and others extend greetings on the occasion. Prime Minister reminds everyone to keep the mantra of Dawai Bhi, Kadai Bhi in mind. In international news, a 12-member Minneapolis jury finds ex-policeman Derek Chauvin guilty of the murder of George Floyd. US President Joe Biden terms the verdict a giant step forward in the march towards justice in America. In sports, falling anger and criticism from across the footballing world, English clubs decide to withdraw from the European Super League. All 6 English clubs confirm they have initiated the procedures for leaving ESL. European Super League says they are focusing on reshaping the project. Well, those were the top stories. Now, let's begin with first up, taking a look at the COVID-19 update from across the country. As per the Union Health Ministry, 259,170 new cases were reported on Tuesday. 167,457 recoveries were recorded in the last 24 hours, taking that cumulative total of recovered patients to 1,32,76,039. With this, the recovery rate currently stands at 85.56%. India's total active caseload stands at 21,57,538. The country's present active caseload consists of 13.26% of the total positive cases. The fatality rate in India stands at 1.18%. Notably, India has crossed a landmark milestone in its COVID-19 vaccination program, recording over 13 crore COVID-19 vaccine doses being administered. 13 crore 1,19,310 vaccine doses being administered in India. Vaccine doses given in a single day, 29,90,197 doses on Tuesday. With this, India has become the fastest country to achieve the milestone in just 95 days. Meanwhile, according to the Indian Council of Medical Research, as many as 27 crore 10,53,392 samples have been tested across the country so far. Out of these, 16,39,357 samples were tested in a single day on the 20th of April. That's the Tuesday gone by. Prime Minister Narendra Modi has called the option to impose lockdown and similar restrictions to be seen as the last resort. In an address to the nation, Prime Minister said that the nation has to be saved from lockdown, and in the fight against corona, he further advised states to concentrate on identifying micro-containment zones to defeat the second wave of this deadly virus.
आज की स्थिति में हमें देश को लॉकडाउन से बचाना है। मैं राज्यों से भी अनुरोध करूंगा कि वो लॉकडाउन को अंतिम विकल्प के रूप में ही इस्तेमाल करें। लॉकडाउन से बचने की भरपूर कोशिश करनी है और माइक्रो कंटेनमेंट जोन पर ही ध्यान केंद्रित करना है। हम अपनी अर्थव्यवस्था की सेहत भी सुधारेंगे और देशवासियों की सेहत का भी ध्यान रखेंगे।
Well, on the issue of oxygen demand, Prime Minister said that we are working on a war footing to ensure availability of adequate oxygen and bed availability in hospitals. The Prime Minister said that through proactive steps taken by the centre over the last few days, private sector has also been roped in the process.
इस बार कोरोना संकट में देश के अनेक हिस्से में ऑक्सीजन की डिमांड बहुत ज्यादा बढ़ी है। इस विषय पर तेजी से और पूरी संवेदनशीलता के साथ काम किया जा रहा है। केंद्र सरकार, राज्य सरकारें, प्राइवेट सेक्टर सभी की पूरी कोशिश है कि हर जरूरतमंद को ऑक्सीजन मिले। ऑक्सीजन प्रोडक्शन और सप्लाई को बढ़ाने के लिए भी कई स्तरों पर उपाय किए जा रहे हैं। राज्यों में नए ऑक्सीजन प्लांट्स हो, 1 लाख नए सिलेंडर पहुंचाने हो, औद्योगिक इकाइयों में इस्तेमाल हो रही ऑक्सीजन का मेडिकल इस्तेमाल हो, ऑक्सीजन रेल हो, हर प्रयास किया जा रहा है।
Prime Minister also called upon the state governments to urge the migrant workers to stay where they are, and trust given by the states to the workers will help them that they will be vaccinated in the city where they presently are.
प्रयास से भी ये है कि आर्थिक गतिविधियां और आजीविका कम से कम प्रभावित हो। प्रयास का तरीका यही रखा जाए। वैक्सीनेशन को 18 वर्ष की आयु के ऊपर के लोगों के लिए ओपन करने से शहरों में जो हमारे वर्कफोर्स है उसे तेजी से वैक्सीन उपलब्ध होगी। राज्यों और केंद्र सरकार के प्रयासों से श्रमिकों को भी तेजी से वैक्सीन मिले लगेगी। मेरा राज्य प्रशासन से आग्रह है कि वो श्रमिकों का भरोसा जगाए रखे। उनसे आग्रह करें कि वो जहां है वहीं रहे। राज्यों द्वारा दिया गया ये भरोसा उनकी बहुत मदद करेगा कि वो जिस शहर में हैं वहीं पर अगले कुछ दिनों में वैक्सीन भी लगेगी और उनका काम भी बंद नहीं होगा।
Prime Minister Modi also requested various media channels for responsible reporting so as to not create panic among the people.
प्रचार माध्यमों से भी मेरी प्रार्थना है कि ऐसे संकट की घड़ी में वो लोगों को सतर्क और जागरूक करने के लिए जो प्रयास कर रहे हैं उसे और बढ़ाएं। इसके साथ ही इसके लिए भी काम करें कि डर का माहौल कम हो सके, लोग अफवाह और भ्रम में न आए।
In view of the second wave of COVID-19 across the country, the government has decided to extend the insurance scheme under the PMGKY for healthcare workers for a year till the 20th of April 2022. The scheme under the Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan package announced last year as part of the COVID-19 relief package had come to an end on March 24th, and the government has said it was meant to provide a safety net to about 22 lakh healthcare workers. The latest extension is for the next 1 year, and so far 287 claims have been settled under the scheme, which includes claims from the families of 168 doctors who had died after contracting COVID-19 while treating patients. Under the scheme, healthcare workers were offered an insurance cover of 50 lakh rupees. This provides a safety net for the families of the healthcare workers who died while on COVID-19 duty. In line with Prime Minister Narendra Modi's priority to ensure affordable medical care for COVID-19 patients, the government has withdrawn the 10% custom duty levied on COVID-19 drug Remdesivir, API, injections and specific inputs. Custom duty has been waived off on Remdesivir, active pharmaceutical ingredients, that's API, injection Remdesivir and beta cyclodextrin. They are used in the manufacture of Remdesivir. The move would help augment domestic availability and reduce the cost of the injection, thus providing relief to patients. The order will remain enforced up to and inclusive of 31st of October this year. Earlier this month, the centre banned the export of the injection and its APIs till the situation in India improves. The national capital, Delhi, on Tuesday recorded 28,395 coronavirus cases, the highest figure since the pandemic broke out in Jan last year, taking the city's tally of infections to 9,05,541. The toll went up by 277, that's the number of deaths, while 12,638 was the positivity rate jump. That's now at 32.82%. There are 85,575 active cases in the city, and 85,575 people have also recovered from the disease so far. The city is facing an acute shortage of oxygen beds and medicines with a sharp rise in new cases. The national capital went under a 6-day lockdown from 10 p.m. on Monday night due to the massive surge in COVID-19 cases. Chief Minister Arvind Kejriwal had said that the time would be to upscale arrangements for oxygen, medicines and hospital beds in the city. Well, amidst a huge surge in COVID cases in Maharashtra, the state government has given enough indications that it may finally have to take a call to induce lockdown in the state to arrest the spiraling rise. In a state cabinet meeting, all the ministers have requested Chief Minister Uddhav Thackeray to impose a lockdown in the state. A decision is likely to be announced by the Chief Minister Uddhav Thackeray today evening.
लॉकडाउन के बारे में माननीय मुख्यमंत्री जी ने निर्णय लिया है, लेकिन उसकी घोषणा वे स्वयं करेंगे और उसके बारे में वे स्वयं उसके बारे में निर्णय लेंगे। मंत्रिमंडल ने उनके ऊपर पूरा सौंपा है, लेकिन मंत्रिमंडल ने एकजुट होकर एक ही मांग की है कि लॉकडाउन बहुत स्ट्रिक्टली होना चाहिए।
Well, for more on this story, we'll head to the western part of India, to the state of Maharashtra and to the capital Mumbai, where our correspondent Shishir Shilar joins us to give an update. Shishir, looking at the way things stand, you know, a grim situation, especially in the western state of Maharashtra. Having said that, how do you look at the numbers, in the last 24 hours? Do the numbers, present some kind of optimism? Or is the state government now worried that, these numbers could spiral up further?
Well, absolutely. Just one of the statements you heard from the State Health Minister, Rajesh Tope, it shows the indication that the numbers are rising, and that's quite a worrisome factor for the state government. And hence, the consensus was built in yesterday's state cabinet meeting, and all the cabinet ministers have conveyed to the chief minister that now a strict lockdown probably is the only option left with the states. And that's the reason probably Maharashtra Chief Minister likely, as he said, that he'll make announcement today. But before that, let me tell you that the state government have actually put a strict lockdown in the way the notification has been issued, according to which now all the shops in the state will be operational from 7 a.m. to 11 a.m., including the grocery shop also. So these kind of restrictions the government already started putting in. Apart from that, we may see people on the street actually. The public transport was actually working here, including auto and taxis. Or also we can see on the streets people were traveling without any hassle. But now, as we have seen yesterday only, we have seen that numbers across almost 60,000 mark. Yesterday's tally was around 62,000. Every day, the cases is going around 55 to 60,000, 1,000 cases every day. So that's a numbers which is quite a huge number compared to the first wave in Maharashtra, and that's the reason when we see this kind of rise in COVID positive patients, ultimately put a lot of pressure on the healthcare infrastructure in the state, because ultimately the state will have to provide the beds, oxygen, ventilators, and the remdesivir medicines also to all the patients. Keeping that in mind, probably in yesterday's cabinet meeting, all the cabinet ministers echoed the same demand that there's a strict lockdown is a need of the hour, and probably we can see that number then only may try to reduce here. It's been a 1 week now that the state government have put some restrictions here. Earlier we also seen the weekend lockdown, some of the stringent action were taken also. But in spite of that, the number wasn't reducing. It was still increasing the way we have seen it be 50,000, 60,000, 65,000 every day. And that's the reason now state has left with no choice but to put a strict lockdown. Now, obviously, the decision will be taken by the Chief Minister. What are the modalities, which are services will be open, what are do's and don'ts during this strict lockdown, we'll come to know when the Chief Minister will announce it.
Okay, when you look at Maharashtra's, or Maharashtra, let's be more specific. When you look at Mumbai's caseload, roughly when you see that caseload, you see more and more high-rise buildings there. And Mumbai's got, high-rise and standalone buildings that are more in number. And you see 90% of the cases coming from these high-rise and standalone buildings as compared to the slums. So does the problem become manifold, when it comes to containing it?
Well, absolutely. It's not just strict to the slum areas now. Even in during the first wave, we have seen the beginning of the first wave may have started from the slum areas, but later on we have seen here it spread to high rises in the buildings and the some of the plush areas of Mumbai also. Even this time around, we have seen here that most of the cases we are getting it from these buildings also in plush areas, and that's the reason the government have actually focusing on the micro containment zone here, because nearly, if talk about Mumbai, more than 100 buildings comes under the micro containment zone here. And that's the reason BMC is more focused on managing of these micro containment zone. Earlier, there was only 1 or 2 places, maybe there are 24 wards in Mumbai. But now if you look at the entire picture, in entire 24 wards, we have seen that the micro containment zones exist. And that's what becoming more challenging for the even for the BMC, that how to tackle this micro containment zone. Earlier, we used to see 3 or 4 or maybe 10 or 15 micro containment zone here, but now that has number also increased exponentially. If you look at especially the building, as you asked me the question, if you find 5 cases in one building, probably that building is considered as a micro containment zone here. That's for the strict actions the BMC is taking, and that's the reason we have seen that number are increasing each day of the micro containment zone here. Even yesterday, Prime Minister Narendra Modi also focused on managing the micro containment zone available across the state here. Even the BMC, apart from the BMC, the other municipal corporation in Mumbai like Pune, Nagpur is also focusing on the same, that how to tackle this micro containment zone.
Okay, now looking at, there is also a facility of doorstep delivery that's being done, which are basically the units, that are facing the pressure when it comes to doorstep delivery of, essential items now.
Well, it was actually existed in first lockdown as well, but only few areas we have seen here that this service was possible. Some of the shopkeepers or establishments were actually offering this service. But on larger scale, if you look at this, then probably the doorstep delivery isn't possible in Mumbai. For that matter, if you look at the entire state also, it is only possible in some of the tier 1 cities or maybe some of the metropolitan cities. But as far as the other areas concerned, tier 2 cities are concerned, probably this is not possible. Although we have seen a different chain during last lockdown. Earlier, people used to go to the market, and the market used to get a supply from the farmers. But last time around, we have seen a lot of farmers have actually on their own started selling their products to the people via mobile phone, or maybe there are different mode of options here. Actually, farmers were selling the product directly to the consumers here. So that chain we actually established during last lockdown. Probably this time around, we may see this kind of things also will exist here. The farmers will directly contact to the consumers, and doorstep delivery can be possible. But the traditional mode of way that only the shopkeepers or maybe the big established only giving the delivery to the people, probably that is not available everywhere in the city.
Okay, a grim picture that you're presenting, but when you look at the death toll, 61,343 deaths in the western state of Maharashtra. You take good care of yourself, Shishir. We'll come back to you across the day for more updates there from Mumbai and Maharashtra in particular. So things not looking good there, especially from Maharashtra and Mumbai in particular. Let's now shift focus to Uttar Pradesh, where the government of Uttar Pradesh has decided to administer the COVID-19 vaccines free of cost to all those above 18 years of age from the 1st of May. The decision was taken at a cabinet meeting chaired by the Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath. The cabinet also thanked Prime Minister Narendra Modi for allowing administration of the coronavirus vaccines to those above 18 years of age. In a statement, the Chief Minister said that the Prime Minister's decision will help in better management of COVID, and massive vaccination will help in defeating coronavirus. The state government will take forward the vaccination program with its own resources. Karnataka, meanwhile, has imposed a night curfew beginning today till the 4th of May from 9 p.m. to 6 a.m. Besides, a weekend curfew will also be imposed from Friday 9 p.m. to Monday 6 a.m. An order was approved by the Chief Minister B.S. Yedurappa after an all-party meeting. Schools, colleges, cinema halls, gyms, theatres, bars, pubs, assembly halls and religious places are to remain shut during the mentioned time frame. Restaurants will be closed and only takeaway services will be allowed. The government had earlier decided to cancel exams for students from class 9th and they will be promoted to the next academic year based on internal assessments. The government has also set up a control room to help oxygen supply to the hospitals. Meanwhile, Karnataka recorded the steepest rise in the number of positive cases as 21,794 fresh cases were reported in the last 24 hours, while Bangalore urban recording 13,782 cases in a single day. Moving to poll-bound state of West Bengal, where all the necessary preparations are being finalized for the 6th phase of polling of assembly elections on 22nd of April, that's Thursday. The polling will be conducted from 7 a.m. to 6:30 p.m. Voter verifiable paper audit trail, that's VVPAT, will be used along with the electronic voting machine at every polling station to enhance the transparency and credibility of the election process. Option of postal ballot facility has also been extended to the electors who are COVID-19 positive or suspect as certified by an competent authority and are in home or institutional quarantine, along with those marked as persons with disabilities and above the age of 80 years. During the 6th phase, a total of 306 candidates, including 27 women, will be vying for the 43 assembly seats spread over 4 districts of the state. Over 1 crore 3 lakh voters, including 50 lakh 65,000 women and 256 third gender persons, will decide the fate of these candidates. A total of 14,480 polling stations have been set up for this purpose. Meanwhile, the election campaign is in full swing as the 7th as well as the 8th and final phase of the assembly elections take place on the 26th and 29th. Prominent leaders of different political parties are engaged in a whirlwind tour for canvassing in favor of their candidates. In the wake of COVID-19, all the prominent political parties have already decided not to hold big rallies and public meetings in West Bengal. Well, moving to the next story, India was on Tuesday elected to 3 UN Economic and Social Council bodies, which includes the Commission on Crime Prevention and Criminal Justice, UN Women Executive Board, and Executive Board of the World Food Programme. Established by the Economic and Social Council, the CCPCJ acts as the principal policy-making body of the United Nations in the field of crime prevention and criminal justice. India, as an elected permanent state of the CCPCJ, will exchange expertise, experience and information on developing strategies for combating crime internationally. The UN Women Executive Board works to ensure gender equality and the empowerment of women using intergovernmental support. While the World Food Programme's Executive Board pledges to eliminate hunger and food insecurity and aims to provide hunger assistance and resilience to countries struggling with poverty and famine. Well, Ram Navami is being celebrated across the country today. The festival, which is celebrated on the last day of Chaitra Navratri every year, marks the birth anniversary of Lord Ram. As per the Hindu scriptures, Ram was the seventh incarnation of Lord Vishnu. The second wave of COVID-19 has cast a shadow on the celebrations, with Ram Janmabhoomi and all other major temples of the holy city of Ayodhya being closed for devotees. People celebrate this holy occasion by observing fast, reading Ram's legendary stories and chanting mantras. Due to the increase in the number of COVID-19 cases, it is advisable to stay at home and offer your prayers. President Ramnath Kovind, Vice President and Prime Minister have greeted people on the occasion. The President said the birthday of Lord Sri Ram is celebrated as Ram Navami and it inspires us to lead a virtuous life. Let us all take a pledge to defeat the danger of COVID-19 with integrity and patience. Vice President also extended greetings on the auspicious occasion of Ram Navami. He said, Lord Rama's resolute commitment to justice, good governance and welfare of his people will continue to inspire humanity forever. May Ram Navami bring happiness and peace to our lives, motivate us to walk the path Lord Ram illuminated and create a world. Prime Minister too greeted countrymen on the auspicious occasion of Ram Navami. He said today's message from Lord Ram must be to adhere to our dignity. Prime Minister also reminded everyone to keep the mantra of Dawai Bhi, Kadai Bhi in mind. Well, time for us to slip into a short breather here on News on the Hour. On the other side, we'll take a look at international stories, business and sports update. Stay tuned with News on the Hour. Welcome back to News on the Hour. Former Minneapolis policeman Derek Chauvin was convicted on Tuesday of second-degree murder, third-degree murder and manslaughter in the deadly arrest of George Floyd. The charges carry a maximum sentence ranging from 10 to 40 years in prison. The 12-member jury found Chauvin criminally liable in Floyd's death last year after considering 3 weeks of testimony from 45 witnesses, including bystanders, police officials and medical experts. The jurors began their deliberations on Monday. In a confrontation captured in video, Chauvin pushed his knee into the neck of George Floyd, a 46-year-old black man in handcuffs, for more than 9 minutes. on May 25, 2020, as he and 3 other fellow officers arrested Floyd, who was accused of using a fake $20 bill to buy cigarettes at a grocery shop. Floyd's death prompted protests against the racism and police brutality in many cities in the United States and around the world last year. US President Joe Biden said that it's a moment of significant change was possible in America just after the jury convicted former police officer Derek Chauvin of murder in the death of George Floyd. Addressing from the White House, the US President described it as a giant step forward in the march towards justice in America.
It was a murder in the full light of day, and it ripped the blinders off for the whole world to see. The systemic racism the Vice President just referred to. The systemic racism is a stain on our nation's soul. The knee on the neck of justice for Black Americans. Profound fear and trauma. The pain, the exhaustion that Black and brown Americans experience every single day. No one should be above the law. And today's verdict sends that message. But it's not enough. We can't stop here. In order to deliver real change and reform, we can and we must do more to reduce the likelihood that tragedies like this will ever happen and occur again.
The family of George Floyd said they were relieved that former policeman Derek Chauvin was convicted of murder in their brother's death. George Floyd's brother said that today they are able to breathe again. Outside the courthouse, a crowd of several hundred people erupted in cheers when the verdict was announced. Floyd's family's attorney, Benjamin Crump, said that they were leaving the court knowing that America is a better country, adding that this moment was important not just for Floyd's legacy, but for the country's legacy. Well, to get more updates on that particular verdict that's come out there, what does it mean? Is it a landmark judgment? We've got our correspondent standing by, Ramesh Ramchandran, joining us to give us more. Ramesh, good morning. How do you look at this verdict? Is it a landmark moment, especially in U.S. criminal judicial history?
Morning, Anil. The intersection of racism and law enforcement has been a cause of particular concern in the United States.
Okay.
Given a spate of similar attacks and incidents in the last few years. And as you mentioned, this is a landmark verdict, a watershed moment in contemporary US history, because the manner in which this Black man, George Floyd, was murdered is particularly striking, because the police officer, or the former police officer in question, Derek Chauvin, actually put his knee on George Floyd's neck for 9 minutes and 29 seconds, due to which George Floyd was asphyxiated, he could not breathe, and eventually he was killed. Now, this verdict found Derek Chauvin guilty on all counts of murder, and he could possibly face a sentence of between 12 and a half years to a maximum of 40 years in prison. Remember, he's only been convicted. Sentencing will come 8 weeks later, and he could be sentenced for anything between 12 and a half years to 40 years. Now, talking about the impact of this verdict, Anil, this is, as I mentioned, a watershed moment, because George Floyd's murder was plastered all over American media and politics. And for the last 10 odd months, we've seen a number of political narratives coming out of this gruesome incident. As Joe Biden said in his remarks last night in the US, this can be a giant step forward in the march toward justice in America. We also heard from the family of George Floyd, Anil, especially his brother, who said, and I'm quoting him here, he says, "We are able to breathe again." And he says, "We have to protest because it seems like this is a never-ending cycle." Now, a clear reference to many incidents in the recent past, including most recently on 11th April, when another Black man was shot and killed not far from where George Floyd was murdered. So it is a recurrent problem in the US, and hopefully going forward, this would put an end to similar incidents in the US.
You know, Ramesh, also put this into perspective. You know, this trial has seen almost 44 witnesses, 15 days of testimony that's gone about. But in the end, you know, less than a day to decide that Derek Chauvin is guilty. You know, some of the key, when you look at this particular story, some of the key moments, you know, especially in this trial.
Well, just to give context and perspective, as you said to our viewers, now this incident took place on 25th May last year, when the officer in question, Derek Chauvin, as I mentioned, put his knee on George Floyd's neck for over 9 minutes. And the trial started on 29th March, that is just about 3 weeks ago. And the trial lasted, in which almost 40 odd witnesses took the courtroom and gave their version of events. And the deliberations took place among the 12-member jury in the last 24 hours, and they came to a unanimous verdict finding Derek Chauvin guilty on all 3 counts of murder. And this was particularly striking because Joe Biden in particular has been speaking out against the excessive use of force. Now, he wants a use of force standard for the police personnel, and this incident has led to what is known as the George Floyd Justice in Policing Act, which awaits signature by the US President. Now, this calls for rooting out unconstitutional policing. It calls for accountability. It calls for reform in police measures and law enforcement. So this has multiple layers and impacts going forward. And many people in the US believe this could be a watershed moment for policing in the US, generally speaking.
You know, considering that, now it's almost clear that, we are waiting the term of his particular judgment that comes into play. But do you somewhere feel, that calls for justice for George Floyd, does it stop here after this verdict, or do you see it becoming a much larger, movement, especially in the United States?
Well, looking at it politically speaking, domestic politics in the US, especially, Anil, we've seen similar incidents take place in the last many years under successive American presidents, be it Barack Obama, be it Donald Trump, and now under President Joe Biden. Now, the fact remains that this might not be the last such event. This is a recurrent problem, as I mentioned. But the problem Joe Biden faces is to put a lid on such incidents and to have effective laws in place to prevent recurrence of such incidents going forward. As the family of George Floyd themselves mentioned, that this is a quote-unquote never-ending cycle of unfortunate murders, and they want this to be a landmark verdict, a watershed moment, so that it could act as a deterrent for similar acts of violence going forward. So all eyes on the sentencing. Anil, as I mentioned, this will happen in the next 8 weeks. The police officer in question could face up to 40 years in prison. Remember, there are 3 other officers who were also suspended last year, along with Derek Chauvin, and their trial will start sometime later in the year. So there are multiple, there are many moving parts of the story. Derek Chauvin is one case. There are 3 other officers who will put on trial going forward as well. So this is, by all accounts, a politically charged story in the US as we speak.
Okay, we'll leave it there. Thank you and appreciate you joining us this morning, giving us an insight into this particular verdict on George Floyd that's occupied each and every people's mind, not only in America, but also the rest of the world. Thank you once again for joining us on News on the Hour. Well, moving forward now, coming back to that coronavirus update and taking a look at what the numbers are. When you look at the global numbers, more than 14 crore 35 lakh people worldwide have so far tested positive for COVID-19, while over 12 crore people have recovered from coronavirus. The deadly virus has so far claimed 30 lakh 56,000 lives worldwide. The United States continues to be the worst affected country by the COVID-19 pandemic. So far, 3 crore 82 lakh cases of COVID-19, while the death toll now passed 5 lakh 82,000 in United States of America. Well, Europe's drug regulator has found a possible link between Johnson & Johnson's COVID-19 vaccine and a rare blood clotting issues in adults who receive the doses in the United States, but backed its overall benefits against any risk. The European Medicines Agency, that's EMA, on Tuesday said that its safety committee had concluded that a warning about the unusual blood clots with low platelets must be added to the vaccine's label, just as it has also required of rival vaccine maker AstraZeneca. The findings are a blow to the European Union, which is battling major hurdles in its immunization campaign after several nations suspended or limited the use of AstraZeneca's vaccine over possible blood clots. Well, I stand corrected on the United States number. The number is 3 crore 25 lakh when it comes to infections in America. Well, moving on, Mexican president received the AstraZeneca vaccine against COVID-19, urging citizens to place trust in the benefit of vaccines. Earlier, several countries limited the use of AstraZeneca due to suspected links to rare blood clots. Lopez Obrador, 67, said the benefits of getting inoculated outweigh the risk of the low-cost shot, which is core pillar of Mexico's vaccination strategy. The Mexican president encouraged all older adults to get their shots to be protected from coronavirus. He added that the government is tracking vaccine studies being carried out worldwide. British Prime Minister Boris Johnson on Tuesday said that Britain is launching a search for antivirals to treat COVID-19 with an aim of having at least 2 effective at-home treatments by the end of the year. Johnson has hailed the advent of COVID-19 vaccines and regular testing as the keys to restoring normality by summer, but his government is also supporting research into therapeutics to help in the fight against the pandemic. Research by British scientists has established that both steroid dexamethasone and tolizumab are both arthritis drugs developed by Roche. They reduce the risk of death in patients with severe COVID-19 conditions. Lockdown measures in the Netherlands will be eased from next week as pressure to reopen society mounts despite the high coronavirus infection rates. Prime Minister Mark Rutte said on Tuesday that a nationwide nighttime curfew that has been in place for 3 months, which will be lifted on April 28th, while bars and restaurants will be allowed to serve small groups on outdoor terraces between noon and 6 p.m. Universities and colleges will gradually reopen and stores will be allowed to admit more customers. Netherlands has been in varying stages of lockdown for more than 6 months. All bars and restaurants have been closed since mid-October, and public gatherings of more than 2 people are banned. Since the start of the pandemic, more than 1.4 million coronavirus cases have been confirmed in the European nation, with more than 20,000 deaths in Netherlands. In Brazil, Rio de Janeiro has vaccinated most of its elderly population. Brazil's health secretary said that this is the most important week of our most important campaign in which the group of elderly people over 60 years of age are vaccinated in Rio de Janeiro. Brazil has registered almost 14 million coronavirus cases since the pandemic, with nearly 375,000 deaths. While the death toll in Brazil, 378,580 as we speak. The Union Cabinet, chaired by the Prime Minister Narendra Modi, has given ex post facto approval for the government amendments to the Finance Bill 2021. The bill was enacted on the 28th of March 2021 as the Finance Act 2021. The amendments were essential to clarify and rationalize the proposals further and address stakeholders' concerns arising out of the amendments proposed in the Finance Bill. The government's amendments to the Finance Bill 2021 are tax proposals which shall generate timely revenue for the government and streamline existing provisions by addressing grievances of the taxpayers. Well, time now to take a look at the markets. Sensex and Nifty are shut today due to Ram Navami. Yesterday, domestic equity benchmark continued to show volatile movements as the government's Vaccine for All announcement cheered investors, but doubts over the country's capacity of COVID-19 vaccines played spoilsport. The S&P BSE Sensex index ended 243 points or 0.51% lower at 47,705 points, while it swung in a range of 1,040 points. The broader NSE Nifty 50 declined 63 points or 0.44% to settle or close at 14,296 points. Well, taking a look at Asian and US stock markets, Asian shares and US stocks futures fell today as concerns about a resurgence of COVID-19 cases in some countries cast doubt on the strength of global growth and demand for crude oil. MSCI's broadest index of Asia-Pacific shares outside Japan fell 0.6%, Australian stocks dropped 1.25%, and shares in China were down 0.46%. Stocks in Tokyo slumped 1.79% due to the growing likelihood that Tokyo, Osaka and the surrounding areas will be put on lockdown due to a new wave of coronavirus infections. S&P 500 E-mini stock futures also fell 0.18%. Moving to sports, all 6 English Premier League teams involved in the European Super League have formally withdrawn from the competition. Manchester City were the first club to pull the plug after Chelsea had signalled their intent to do so by preparing documentation to withdrawal. The other 4 sides, Arsenal, Liverpool, Manchester United and Tottenham, have all but followed the 2 English clubs as the Big 6 were part of the 12-team group, also containing Spain's Atletico Madrid, Barcelona and Real Madrid, and Italy's AC Milan, Inter Milan and Juventus, that announced plans to form the Breakaway League, which they hope to establish as a new midweek competition. It was condemned by fans, footballing authorities and government ministers in the UK and across Europe by the UEFA and the league associations. Well, let's now take a look at IPL as Amit Mishra fizzed and whisked the ball with the skill of old as Delhi shook off their history of defeats to the Mumbai team to record a 6-wicket win on a tough pitch in Chennai. Mishra had given 10 runs in his opening over, the last off the power play, but then came back to break the game open and tear through Mumbai's big-hitting lineup. He took out the free-flowing Rohit Sharma, Hardik Pandya in the second over, came back to outfox Kieron Pollard with a googly, and in the final over bowled Ishan Kishan with a yorker. Mishra's 4 for 24 was the best bowling figures by a Delhi bowler against Mumbai in IPL history. Mumbai eventually ended up with just 137 runs for 9 wickets, with Mishra's strike ensuring that Delhi stifled the defending champions. In the end, Delhi managed to lose just 4 wickets as they reached the target with ease to win the match by 6 wickets. Well, epilepsy caused recurrent seizures. Unattended seizures can prove fatal. Let's take a look about this first aid that may help in preventing injuries during the seizure and keep the person safe in our health tip of the day.
Epilepsy affects almost 2% children in the country. What first aid should be given at the time of seizure? To talk about this, we have with us Dr. Shefali Gulati. Dr. Shefali, what should be the first aid during the seizure that should be given to the child?
Most importantly is that parents should not panic. And then the second important thing is positioning of the child during seizure. You should be putting the child in a lateral position, preferably a left lateral position, but it can depend on the type of seizure the child is having. And it's important to understand that we have a food pipe and a windpipe which are there present anterior posteriorly. So whenever you have a seizure, you may have a tendency to vomit. And that vomitus, if it goes to the windpipe, can cause even instantaneous death. And if we are safe from that, it can cause aspiration pneumonia. So it is important by just putting the child lateral. Secondly, the child should be cushioned and positioned in a way that child do not hurt himself or herself during the episode of seizure. A small baby can be put in the lap only, and a bigger child can be made even on the sofa or the floor or the bed. We can have cushions around so that he or she does not get hurt by the corner of the bed or any rod or anything present. So that has to be kept as important.
What precautions should be kept with an epileptic child?
If you have the first episode of seizure, then you won't have any abortive management treatment available at home. But when you have a second episode of seizure, when the treatment has already been started, you should have some nasal sprays which are available. The nasal sprays are available and that you should be giving and the prescribed dosage 3 minutes after, if the seizure is continuing for beyond 3 minutes. That is very important. And we have made a card for the children from going for school. In the anterior part of the card, we just have the demographic profile, and in the posterior part of the card, we have put the recovery position of the child and the nasal spray doses. And we have requested the parents that they should laminate the card and give it with the child, and keep 2 nasal sprays, one in the school bag and one at home. And we have also made a seizure diary, which is there in the first 2 pages of the seizure diary. We have what are the do's and don'ts for epilepsy, and then we have what is the recovery position. So these are available on our website, and even the video of how exactly to take care of the child at the domiciliary level is on the website.
What should be avoided during the seizure to prevent the child from secondary injuries or damage?
One should not try to open the mouth or put anything inside the mouth. It can lead to some fractures and all, and it can be very dangerous. And we should ensure that the child is cushioned from the surroundings so that he or she does not hurt or injure himself, the head or any of the legs or anything, and should not fall down.
What are the restrictions or the precautions that should be kept if a child is having recurrent seizures?
First and foremost, parents have a tendency to hide from the school. They should not be hiding from the school, and they should be telling the school what the child has and show the prescription and this card which has been made for them. And if when the child is having seizures, it's new onset seizures, and or they are having quite a few seizures, and then they are advised not to go for swimming or cycling initially, but once they are controlled, then they can do it in a supervised manner. And the parents are also should be confiding in the teachers everything whatever they've been told by the doctors. This is very, very crucial.
Thank you, Dr. Shefali. If your child has epilepsy, it is important that you give proper and complete treatment and also take some precautions to maintain the quality of life of your child. Kiran Bhardwaj, DD News.
Well, that's all we have time for in this edition of News on the Hour. Remember, the fight against COVID-19 continues. It's not about curfews that many people are complaining about. It's about, we caring for you and you caring for us. And that should be the priority. But do not forget that simple tip that I always mention. It's called SMS. S stands for sanitizing, M stands for masking yourself, and the other S stands for social distancing. Remember, this fight is not over. This fight is, when you look at numbers, it's getting bigger. So we need to be cautious, not only for ourselves, not only for our loved ones, not only for people that we know. We need to be cautious in this fight, because we all need to mask up together to not only save ourselves but also to save humanity at large. That's it from me and the entire team on News on the Hour. You take good care of yourself. Have a safe and wonderful day ahead. Bye-bye.